Hello and welcome to our next remote learning lesson. Recently we have been looking at speed and pressure, however we do need to move on to a new topic now. And I want to start this topic with a question. The question is, what things do you need to survive? I would like you to pause the video now and I would like you to quickly jot down in your books. You can use bullet points, write down as many things as you can think of that you need to survive. Okay then, you should have paused the video and you should have written a couple of answers to the question that's on the PowerPoint at the moment. We'll refer back to your answers later and see if you had any similar ones to something we're going to talk about in a bit. Today's title is the words competition and adaptation. So in your exercise books, write the title, competition and adaptation. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to tell me what the word competition means. You should be able to describe the resources that plants and animals compete for, and you should be able to evaluate the relationship between a predator and a prey. So write down the title. As always, we're going to use the chalkboard to make sure we get down the notes that we need. So, the first key word we need to write down is the word resources. Resources. Now, you didn't know this, but the question at the start, this question where I said, what are the things that you need to survive? The things we need to survive are often called resources. Okay? So we can define the word resources as the following. The things living organisms need to live. So the things living organisms need to live. Now, remember, we're talking about living organisms. A lot of people tend to forget that bacteria are living things and so are plants. So when we're talking about living organisms, we're talking about animals, plants, fungi. We're talking about microorganisms. Microorganisms. Okay? Now, resources, excuse me, the resources that animals need are different from the resources that plants need. Okay? So we can use this yellow colour. The four things that animals need. So animals need the following resources. The four things that animals need to survive are food, water, territory, and mates. Now, when we're talking about mates, we don't mean friends. We don't mean I'm your best mate, I am. What we mean is that they need somebody to reproduce with. Animals reproduce mostly sexually, therefore you need to find a mate in order to reproduce and have children. On the other hand, the resources that plants need, so plants need the following resources. So plants need different resources to animals. They need nutrients. We don't say that they need food because, let me just write this. They need nutrients. We don't say they need food because you don't see a plant going off to get a hamburger. You don't see a plant going off to catch a gazelle to eat it. They get nutrients from the soil. They need water. All living things need water. They need space to grow. So they need space. And the final thing that plants need is light. Light. Okay? So animals need food, water, territory and mates in order to survive. Those are the resources they need to live. Whereas plants need nutrients, water, space and light. Those are the things that they need to live. Now, the only problem with this is that there's only so much of these resources to go around. There's only so much food for animals to get. There's only so much water for plants and animals to get. There's only so much space for plants to get. Okay? So the first important point we can write down in red is that there are only so many resources to go around. There are only so many resources to go round. Okay? Now, we've said at the top that these are the things that you need to live. If you don't get these things, you'll either die if you don't have food or water or somewhere to live, or you won't reproduce and pass your genes on. So we can say without these resources, comma, organisms will die. Exclamation point. Therefore, we say that there is competition between organisms, and that's our next key word. Competition. Okay? Competition can be defined as organisms race to get the resources they need to survive. The resources they need to survive. So, resources are the things that living organisms need to live. Different living organisms include animals, plants, fungi, and microorganisms. This isn't all of them, but the majority of them. Animals need the following resources to live. They need food, water, territory, and mates. Plants need the following resources to live. They need nutrients, water, space, and nutrients, water, space, and light. The bad news is there's only so many resources to go around. There's only so much water. There's only so many nutrients. There's only so much food. Therefore, without these resources, organisms will die, and therefore they need to compete with each other to get these resources. Okay? Now, what we can say before we clear the screen is we can say that organisms, I'm going to add it underneath here, organisms with the best adaptations are more likely to win competition for resources. So, organisms with the best adaptations are more likely to win competitions for resources. Okay? So the organisms with the best adaptations are more likely to win this competition for resources. So if we have a look at our learning objectives, you should now be able to tell me what is meant by the word competition, and you should be able to tell me the resources that animals and plants compete for. So if we just clear this screen so we can do this final little bit, turn that back to black, and we can write down our first keyword, which is, or our next keyword even, adaptation. Adaptation. Okay? Now an adaptation is defined as a characteristic that helps an organism survive in its environment. Survive in its environment. Okay? So it's a characteristic that helps an organism survive in its environment. Oftentimes, these adaptations allow organisms to compete for the resources they need. So we can put underneath here, oftentimes these adaptations allow organisms to compete for resources. To compete for resources. Now, there are millions, if not trillions, of organisms in the world, okay? All of these organisms all have their own adaptations. They all have special things that allow them to compete for resources. I cannot sit here and go through every single organism ever and expect you to understand each individual adaptation that it has. What I do expect you to be able to do is to be able to apply some principles. Okay? Now, to help you do this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over 4 basic groups of organisms and how they're adapted. Okay? The first type of organism I want to go over is what's known as a predator. Predator. Okay? Now, a predator is defined as an organism or an animal that eats other animals. So it's an animal that eats other animals. Now, if we're going to think about adaptations that predators have, I'm going to change to blue because we haven't used it yet. If we think of some of the adaptations that a predator may have, a predator eats other animals. So we need to think of adaptations that a predator would need to allow it to eat other animals. So oftentimes they have sharp teeth. This helps them rip the other animal apart. At the same time, they might have sharp claws. Okay? They usually have good hearing. Good hearing. Another adaptation, I'm going to put this one in red because it's a very, very easy one to use, is if you're not sure if an animal is a predator or a prey, most predators, if not all of them, have their eyes on the front of their head. That allows them to focus on their prey in order to chase it. So we can add underneath here, we can say that they have eyes on the front of their head. Of their head. We can add a bit more to these blue ones up here. We can say that they're fast. So that they're fast to allow them to catch the prey as it runs away. Another example of an organism, or another group of organisms that we can talk about, is a prey. Prey. P-R-E-Y. Now, a prey animal is an animal that is hunted and eaten by predators. So, an animal that is hunted and eaten by predators. Okay? Now, prey are often very, very fast to run away from predators. So they are fast. They usually have good hearing. And more importantly, they have what's known as monocular vision. They have their eyes on the side of their head, which allow them to see all around. So we can say that they have eyes on the side of their head to see all around. So predators are animals that eat other animals. They have sharp teeth, sharp claws, good hearing, and are very, very fast. They have eyes on the front of their head so that they can focus on their prey as they try to catch it. A prey animal is an animal that is hunted and eaten by predators. They're fast, they have good hearing, and they have their eyes on the side of their head so that they can see all around them. These are all just basic adaptations, okay? There are other examples. The other ones I wanted to talk about were animals in cold climates. So animals in cold climates. If an animal is in a cold climate, it will tend to have a set number of adaptations. Okay? So we can say animals in cold climates have lots of blubber, which we call fat. Blubber, not blubbers, blubber to keep warm. They have thick fur to keep warm. They have wide feet to stop them sinking in the snow. Wide feet to stop sinking. And they also tend to have small ears. Small ears and short, chunky limbs. To keep heat in. to keep heating. So organisms that are in cold climates tend to have a lot of blubber and thick fur to keep warm. They have wide feet to stop them sinking in the snow, and they tend to have small ears and short chunky limbs to keep heating. On the other hand, animals in hot climates, so animals in hot climates, we can underline this, they tend to have little fat and they tend to have short, thin fur. This is to allow heat to escape their bodies easily. They urinate less to keep water. They tend to have things like long eyelashes. A camel will have long eyelashes. Long eyelashes to keep sand out of eyes. To keep sand out of eyes. And finally, they tend to have large ears and long thin limbs to lose heat. So they have large ears / long thin limbs to lose heat. To lose heat. I'm nearly going off the screen. So they have animals in hot climates tend to have little fat, short thin fur, urinate less to keep water. They have long eyelashes to keep sand out of their eyes, and they have large ears / long thin limbs to lose heat. Right then, I've spoken for long enough. What I would like you to do now, I would like you please to have a go at this. I would like you to pause the video. I would like you to copy out the sentences into your book and then fill in the gaps. We're then going to come back together and mark it. So pause the video now. Make sure you get a different coloured pen ready so that you can mark and correct your work. Okay then, by now you should have written out and completed the gaps in the questions on the PowerPoint. Let's get this marked. So if we can just copy this, if we can refresh our whiteboard. If we can paste our questions in, and let's have a look. So it should read, let me just get a red pen so that we can mark it. It should read, plants and animals compete for a number of resources. Resources. These include water and space. Animals also compete for food and mates. And mates to reproduce. Sorry, I got a bit confused there. Mates to reproduce. Plants make their own food by photosynthesis, so they compete for light. Light. Organisms have a number of adaptations. Adaptations that enable them to survive in their habitat. So it should have read, Plants and animals compete for a number of resources. These include water and space. Animals also compete for food and for mates to reproduce. Plants make their own food by photosynthesis, so they compete for light. Organisms have a number of adaptations that enable them to survive in their habitat. So you should have marked that. If not, pause the video now and get it marked or corrected. And we're going to move on to our next question. So what I would like you to do, I would like you to pause the video and I would like you to answer the following two questions. How is this fox adapted to catch rabbits? And how is this rabbit adapted to avoid being caught by foxes? Pause the video now, have a go, and then we'll mark it. Okay, so you should have paused the video. You should have written down what you think the adaptations of both of those are. Let's clear our whiteboard and let's paste our first one in. So the first organism we've got is a fox, okay? And a fox is a predator. So the first thing you should have written down is that a fox is a predator. So it's a predator. It's adapted to catch the rabbit. So first of all, the one that we said is that its eyes are on the front of its head. Its eyes are on the front of its head so it can see its prey and focus on it. So eyes on the front of head. And we can put in brackets because this is known as binocular vision. Another adaptation that the fox has got is that it's got good hearing. So good hearing so that it can hear the rabbit where it's down its burrow. They also have a very good sense of smell, which allow them to see or to detect where the rabbit is. So good, change that D because that's going to annoy me, good sense of smell. They've got sharp teeth to allow them to rip the rabbit to pieces when they catch it. So sharp teeth. And they've also got sharp claws. Sharp claws. Foxes have very strong back legs, so they can run quickly. Okay, these are all adaptations that allow the fox to be a predator. If we just look back at the question, remember it says, how are foxes adapted to catch rabbits? It's not asking how are they adapted for hot or cold climates. So you shouldn't have mentioned anything to do with hot or cold climates. You should have only mentioned how it's adapted to catch a rabbit. Now if we can just have a quick look at the rabbit and we can think about how that's adapted. So the first thing you should have written down, exactly like we did with the fox, you should have written down that a rabbit is a prey animal. So the rabbit gets caught by a fox to be eaten. So it's a prey animal. Okay? First thing you should see is that it has its eyes on the side of its head. So eyes on side of head. Now this is known as monocular vision. Monocular vision. Now that allows the rabbit to see not only what's coming from this way, but also what's coming from this way. At the same time, it has good hearing. And if you notice, it has its ears angled at different directions, so it can hear the fox coming. Rabbits or hares are incredibly quick. They can run so fast. And the reason they run fast is so that a fox can't catch them to eat them. So we can put that they run fast. That allows the rabbit to avoid being eaten. Okay? They have a good sense of smell. If you know anything about rabbits, they're constantly twitching their nose. So good smell. A more interesting one, which people may not have got, is that rabbits have whiskers. Now, why whiskers are important is because they know that if their whiskers fit down a hole, the rest of their body will. The whiskers of an animal, if you've got a cat at home, if you look at its whiskers are wider, if not as wide as the cat's body. What that means is that if the cat tries to quickly run down a hole or down a gap, the whiskers will bend. And if the whiskers bend, the cat knows or the rabbit knows that it can't fit in that hole and it'll quickly change direction. However, if the whiskers don't touch, the rabbit or the cat knows that it can fit down and it will get away from its predator. So these are some examples of how the rabbit is adapted to avoid being eaten by a fox. Final one, I would like you please to write out this question in your book, and I would then like you to have a go at the question. Pause this video now so that you can then have a go. Okay then, so you should have had a go at that question. Could you please make sure that you've got a different coloured pen so that we can mark it? If we just refresh this, so we don't want to save it, I don't want the picture of a rabbit on my desktop. If we add that in, if we paste our question, and it'll do that size and we can change to red. So it says, explain in detail how the adaptations and behaviour of an oryx allows it to survive in the desert. So the first one that you should have noted, or one of the ones that you should have noted, is that they have concentrated urine and dry feces. This is important because it stops the loss of water. So stops the loss of water, which is really important in a hot climate. In a hot climate, the last thing you want to do is keep losing water. Next one, you should have said that the large body heats up slowly. This prevents overheating. So prevents overheating. The next one, it moves at night to feed. It's usually colder of the evening, therefore it's not going to get too hot. So we can say this one avoids high temperatures in the daytime. And next one, we can say that it doesn't sweat. The fact that it doesn't sweat means that it won't lose water. So less loss of water. It stands in breezes at the top of dunes, which allow it to cool. So it cools the oryx down. So cools oryx down. And the final mark should have said that its wide feet stops it sinking in the sand. So stops oryx sinking in the sand. And that would have given you your 6 marks. So you should have said that it stops the loss of water by having concentrated urine and dry feces, having a large body prevents it overheating, moves around at night, therefore it avoids the high temperatures found in the day, does not sweat, therefore there's less loss of water, it stands in the breezes, therefore it cools it down, and its wide feet stops it sinking in the sand. So, what I would like you to do as a sort of extension task, on the PowerPoint there's these following questions. There's no right or wrong answer. However, if you're at your wit's end and you've got nothing else to do, I would like you to design your ultimate predator. However, it cannot be invisible. And I would like you to design your ultimate prey that is going to avoid being eaten by this predator. So the idea is that you're making a predator that is adapted to catch a prey that is adapted to get away from the predator. You can't say they're invisible. You can be as silly as you want. In the past I've had people say, can it have lasers coming out of its eyes? The answer is yes. Can it fly? The answer is yes. Can it have machine guns for hands? Yes. You can put whatever you want. But the point is, you should then be able to compare them. It's no good having a predator that always catches the prey. You have to have them equal. Sometimes the predator has to catch the prey, otherwise the predator would starve to death, and sometimes the prey has to escape the predator, otherwise all the prey will get eaten. I'll leave you with that to do. If you have any problems or you have any questions, please contact me either in the comments in Google Classrooms or via email, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you.